in your tweets. All right, let's get started. We've got a little bit of time together, and I want to make sure I'm leaving time at the end because I suspect there's a lot of questions about AI, and this will be a good chance for you to get them out. I'm going to start off by looking at the 3 biggest use cases for AI in contact centres that we're seeing today. This is kind of across the board, and speaking with colleagues in the US, the UK, Latin America, very, very similar results across the world. And the 3 biggest use cases that we're seeing, the first one is the post-call summary or post-interaction summary, post-chat, post-email, whatever, where we're using AI to analyse that interaction. We're writing a summary and it's going into the CRM system. Now, some are still doing this with human in the loop because we don't totally trust AI yet, but most pretty quickly then move to fully automated where it just goes into the CRM. A couple of benefits to this. 1, it takes away a laborious task that agents hate. 2, it makes your average handling time shorter. But the big one is that we see consistency in summaries, because those of you that work in contact centres would know, this lovely lady here writes 3 sentences, Brad writes War and Peace. And so getting a consistent summary, and you can also ask AI to track 3 specific data points that later you're going to go and want to analyse. And so on every interaction, you will get that. Remembering that AI never has a bad day, is never hungover, has never just had a fight with their husband or wife. It will do consistently what you want it to do. So that's the first one. The second one that we see, and I'm not going to spend much time on it because I'm always sick of talking about this topic, is customer-facing chatbots. We're still, unfortunately, trapped in a land where a lot of companies are telling you, we have an AI-powered chatbot. That is statistically true, but it's not what you think it is, which is a generative AI-powered chatbot. There's a very big distinction between conversational AI, which actually isn't all that conversational, and generative AI that is very conversational. Okay, if you want a great example of a generative AI chatbot, if you have the Expedia app on your phone, right in the middle of the screen is a very generative AI-driven chatbot. And if you want to understand more about the differences between conversational and generative AI, grab me at afternoon tea and I'll bore you for a while. The third biggest use case, and I'm not just saying this because Brad asked me to come and speak here, but it's knowledge. It's how do we use generative AI to serve up knowledge in a much more intuitive way? How do we have people access that knowledge in a much more intuitive way? And I want to give you an example that I built yesterday in about 5 minutes. And I just built it in Hugging Face, if any of you are wondering how I did this. So I created a little model, and I'm going to apologise now because when I type, it's going to be at the bottom of the screen, so you'll only see it as it scrolls up. What I've made here is, I want you to assume for a minute that we work in a call centre that sells Italian wine. It's probably not too hard for some of us to imagine. It knows everything about Italian wine, and your agent is going to use this tool. So I'll see if I can keep up with my pre-recorded video. So the first thing I'm going to type in at the bottom, and you'll see it scroll up in a minute, is my new client loves champagne. Now, champagne is not French. It's not Italian, as you know, it's French. So the AI comes back and says, while Italy's famous for Prosecco, if your client loves champagne, they should try Franciacorta. Any Franciacorta drinkers in the room? Yeah, none? Oh my God, you guys are missing out. So would you like to know something about Franciacorta? All I said was yes. And so it tells me all about Franciacorta. Its style, its acidity, what it goes great with. So then I type in, who makes the best ones? That's all I typed. Who makes the best ones? And it comes back and says some top producers are Del Bosco, Bertolini, the Bella Vista is actually quite nice, by the way. These producers are highly regarded. So what's my next obvious question? Where do I get them? Right? And I think I just typed in, where do I get them? Yep, I did. Where do I get them? And it says, well, in Melbourne, you'd get them from Dan Murphy's, you'd get them from First Choice Liquor, or Nick's Wine Merchants. There's some examples. Prince Wine Store actually has an amazing array if you are Melbourne-based. This is more becoming about wine than AI, I know. And then I just type a really simple command, 3 online. What am I actually asking? Yeah, I want 3 online retailers. And it comes back with the answer and says, yep, Wine Searcher, Langton's, and the Wine House. So it's great, I've got all my answers. Now I ask AI, please summarize all of this into a short few sentences that I can share with a client. So I want to take the whole discussion we had, and I want to share it because I'm a chat agent. I want to share it with the client. And it says, sure, here's your short summary. If you're looking for a high-end wine, it's Franciacorta. These are some things. You can buy it here, and here's the online ones. And then I type in, now apply the company brand. And in the background, I had told it our company is fun and a little bit cheeky, a little bit naughty, blah, blah, blah. So it's just going to rewrite this straight into the company brand, right? Hey there, wine lover. If you're looking for a bubbly that's a bit more laid back, you got to try Franciacorta, because that's what I've told it is the style that we want. So if you go back, this is the big, big difference between traditional AI and generative. Who here has used a chatbot on a website anywhere? Right. Now put your hand up if that interaction sucked. Yeah, same hands. How about that? And that's because most of those chatbots are built on traditional or conversational AI, which says, you ask a question, I give you an answer. When you ask your next question, that's a new discrete question. I don't relate this question to the previous one. In generative AI, it takes these follow-on questions and adds them into the context of the discussion that you're having. So it's a highly contextualized conversation. That's why I could use commands like, what are the best ones? Where do I get them? Just them. Or even 3 online, the simplest command. This is where knowledge systems are going, right? Putting generative AI in front, not just retrieving an answer. That's kind of the first step, and I love that what James showed today. But that future step is, how does your agent have an interaction with this tool such that they can just ask whatever they need to ask? Here's the big thing to think about. If you can get information this quickly, this concisely, in whatever format you want it, what happens to your average handling time? It shrinks, right? Because there's less hold time. There's less, oh, let me look through the 17 documents that I found in Mitsubishi search, right? Mitsubishi Google, sorry. You're just getting the answers that you need. But that's not actually the big saving. The big saving comes in the form of onboarding. You know, there are government departments, and pardon if there are any of you are in the room today, that have 4-week, 6-week, 8-week onboarding processes where they're just learning policy and procedure and information like a parrot for 6 or 8 weeks, and they've got to be able to parrot it back, right? Why would they need to do that in a future state? What special language did I use to have this conversation? If you think back on that entire conversation, did I, as the user, type the word Franciacorta even once? I didn't need to. It understood what I was doing, and we had that discussion. So what generative AI is doing to knowledge and how knowledge is served up is absolutely changing at an incredible pace. It's one to keep your eye on. And if you're wondering why we're livepro standing up here saying, oh, we're working on this, we're working on this, we're working on this, it's because everybody's trying to keep up with the pace of change of what AI can do. Let alone if I showed you what it can do with images. Yeah, incredible. All right, let's move on. Those were the 3 big use cases for AI. And people often ask me about, and this is the only thing with a graph, I promise. And I apologise to people at the back who probably can't even see it. People ask, are these AI tools, these knowledge tools, actually delivering value? So last year there was a study done of almost 5,200 agents in the Philippines, chat agents, and some were given access to a tool and some were not. The blue line is people who never had a tool, and it was a home-built tool. Sorry, Brad, it wasn't livepro, it was a home-built tool. Green was, for the first 6 months, they did what they've always done, and then they got AI. And the red line is they got AI from day one. Look at average handling time. Red, way below. Chats per hour, up higher, resolution rate higher, and CSAT higher. Although I do notice it turning here. All right, so, and this is a longitudinal study over 12 months with 5,000 people. This isn't just a random sample. This was a full research. If you want to read the research paper, it's fantastic. Generative AI at work. So it really is changing what we do. The interesting thing, though, from that study is that 65% of the AI recommendations were ignored by agents. AI recommended this, and they still went a different way. This is a problem with adoption. We call it adoption bias. People going, AI doesn't know what I know. And in fact, the majority of people who ignored it were the agents that had been there for a very long time, and then we gave them a new tool. All right. The newbies took it on straight away. The experienced people went, AI doesn't know what I know. All right. I want you to think about this a little bit. For those of you that like Iron Man, it's a bit like Jarvis, right? Tony Stark's just a guy until he gets in that helmet with Jarvis and he's got AI all around telling him what he can do and what he can't do. But once again, half of the time, he chooses to ignore it and chooses to do something that's human rather than something that's AI. And that's just how we're seeing people starting to adopt some of this stuff. Interesting, of the 3 use cases I talked about, summarization, chatbots, and knowledge, 2 of the 3, 66% there, required data underneath them, right? The one that doesn't is summarizing the interaction. It doesn't need to retrieve any data. But it's really interesting that 2 of 3 are based on data. The other interesting thing about this graph is how much it looks like Pac-Man. Really, really interesting graph. I love Pac-Man. It actually leads to one of the biggest risks, right? And that big risk is hallucination. And people have talked about that today. For those of you that have never heard of hallucination, when generative AI doesn't have enough information to execute the task that you have asked, it will make up information, right? The technical term for it is it makes shit up. Very technical term. It will just hallucinate, right? So how do we control, or what's the problem with that hallucination? Well, it's not just that it makes it up. There's a bigger problem, and I'll show it to you here. There's 2 circles on the screen. One is slightly bigger than the other, just slightly bigger. Blue, or is it purple? Who thinks the blue circle is the bigger one? Okay, who thinks the purple circle is the bigger one? Who's asleep after lunch and didn't answer? Yeah, good, thank you. Blue or purple? Actually, they're the exact same size. But you voted for one or the other. Why did you do that? Because I was standing at the front of the room with a clicker and I told you that one was bigger than the other and you went, one's bigger than the other. It doesn't look like it, but it must be. He said it was. It's about being authoritative. And what generative AI is a master at is sounding authoritative. All right? It'll tell you you have a melanoma of the kidney on the left rib, and you'll believe it. It'll be like, whoa, it's a computer. It must know what it's talking about. So hallucination is bad, not only for serving up the wrong content, but it will start to teach people the wrong answer over and over and over again because they just believe what comes out. Now, we can address hallucination. One of the ways in which this is done is a thing called temperature, and to the technocrats in the room, pardon me dumbing everything right down here, but temperature is about, it goes between 0 and 1, yes? This is 0, this is 1. Everybody still following? Good. Between 0 and 1, and if you think about how generative AI works, it's a prediction model. It's a mathematical algorithm that predicts an outcome. In this case, it predicts the next word and the next word and the next word. When it predicts that, it has a probability score next to it. So if your temperature is down at 0, you wouldn't have it at 0, but at 0.1 or 0.2, it's only going to accept words that are a very high probability. That is most likely to be accurate. Once you take your temperature to 1, it might accept a word that's a 30% probability because it's allowed to do that when the temperature is turned down. By default, ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, all of those, what do you think the temperature is? You want an easier question? What do you think the temperature is? It's 1. It's set to 1. Yeah, sometimes it feels like 3. It really does. By default, they're all set to 1. You have to adjust the temperature back to do that. So that's one way we can control hallucination. Another one, and James alluded to this today, is to fine-tune your models. That is, take a model, teach it everything about your products, everything about your services. What you're trying to change is what we call the weights and the representations. How many times is this data represented, and what's the strength of the connection between these data points? It takes time, it takes money, it takes effort. So if you're someone that has a product set that only changes once every 10 or 15 years, and it's kind of set in stone and you're done, great. But I can't see Mitsubishi having the same model vehicle for more than 6 months, right? Every 6 months there's a new Mitsubishi coming out, if not more frequently. How are they going to retrain that model over and over and over? It's just not worth doing. So we get into the land of RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, this is a term that's thrown around a lot, and so I want to give you the simple guide to RAG just to help you understand it. Once again, to any developers in the room, please turn around and look away because you're going to hate how I oversimplify this. Without RAG, all right, way over here, this is you using ChatGPT, right? So you ask the LLM, large language model, just in case people didn't know, you ask the large language model a question and you get an answer. Almost like magic, yes? Yes. Okay. What data is being used to derive that answer? Anybody know? Where do the answers come from that come out of ChatGPT? Anyone want to hazard a guess? The internet, everywhere, yes. Well, whatever data it was trained on, right? All of these large language models have a data model that they were trained on. It's referred to as parametric data. That is data that lives in the model. Keeping in mind that these are language models. So it doesn't care what you're talking about. It couldn't care less. It just wants to understand how you're using the words and the words that you're using. So would you want to use this as your company's knowledge system or customer chatbot? Well, probably not, because you can't control what data it's seen and what data it hasn't seen, right? So how does that differ when we do RAG? Well, with RAG, instead of using one language model, we actually use 2. So we use one to ask the question, and that's often a large language model. And the reason we use a large one is because humans are weirdos and could ask any manner of questions. and we want to be able to understand as many questions as possible. And when we send out the answer, we will do that from another model. Now, that might be a large language model, but it may be a small language model. Right? If you're generating answers about credit card application processes, do you need a language model that's big enough that it understands how to disarm a nuclear device? Probably not. You can probably get away with a small language model, right? And just so that you're up with all the sexy terminology, this is referred to as your embedding model. This is referred to as your generation model because it generates the answer, right? So we've now got our question. What do we do with it? Well, the first thing we do is we ignore the parametric data and we ask it to come and use your data. This little database down here. We pass the answer and the original question, because it's got to have context, to this model, and it generates, no, don't take the photo yet, it hasn't finished building. I put a lot of effort into the building, and it generates the answer from your data. Right? And there's a simple way to test if this works. You ask a question like, what's the length of Noah's Ark? And if it can answer it, you know it's not using your data source, right? Because unless you're a biblical society, you probably don't have that in your knowledge base. But it uses your data. Sometimes, though, we have to put a reasoning engine in here. The reason we might need to do that is that imagine that your data source down here is actually just a folder full of PDFs, because that's what some of us have, right? If you're not a livepro customer, that's probably what you've got, or 15 internal websites. And on this PDF, it says that the delivery timeline is 2 days. The call center has a document that says delivery timeline is 5 days, and the dispatch department has a document that says delivery timeline is 10 days. AI is looking at all of those PDFs and it's coming back saying, hang on, I've got 4 answers here. What do I do with this? And so it has to reason out what is the most likely answer. That's what happens when your data is not clean, right? Then, of course, you want to try and secure this. So the way in which you would normally do that, you can have this large language model inside your cloud if you wish, but a lot of people are using a public large language model to understand the question, then having their data and the generation model inside your safe zone so that your information is not going out to the public large language models. Does this make sense? And it may be that from what James just did before lunch, this whole thing was it something I said? Oh no, he's taking a picture. This whole thing may live within livepro, right? That might all be livepro, or you may put a different chatbot in front of your livepro data source because you want to use, I don't know, Easel or Catonic or, whatever that you want to put in front. But it all comes down to kind of the quality of the data sitting in there and how accessible this is. Oh, if you wanted to take a photo, the slide's finished building now. Now you can take a photo, right? Or just hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll send you the slide. I really don't mind. So does that kind of help people understand the difference between RAG and not? This is why it's so powerful. It's because as that data changes, your answer in real time changes. The very next answer will change. And it's super fast. The other thing it does, of course, is as it comes through, is it wants to chunk up that data and understand the chunks, which is what James was getting to about the size of documents and the size of chunks. The bigger the chunks, the harder it can be for AI to understand. The smaller the chunk, the quicker and easier. Okay. You're going to have to think about data quality and data labeling. Jen talked about this morning, trying to color code everything. My bigger concern, are there non-livepro users in the room? Are you willing to put your hands up? Okay, you guys are in trouble. Your data quality and data labeling are going to be a big issue for you. That is, in most knowledge systems, there's a slice of information that we're happy to share with the customers. There's a whole slice of information that we don't want to share with the customers. How does AI know the difference? Straight off the cuff, AI will not know the difference. You're going to have to categorize or tag or quantify that data somehow to say, if an internal is asking, use all of this. If a customer is asking, only use this subset. All right. Once again, I'm not advocating for you, Brad, but once again, very easy to do if you're in a livepro type environment because of the way in which your data is already structured. So even though I don't think Brad knew he was doing this, he's built the ultimate enabler of AI years ago, just trying to structure a better way to hold data together, but actually it's become the big enabler of AI. And if that isn't a free plug for you, I don't know what is, right? Was that? Yeah, one of the sales team clapping, yes. He's looking for a rise in salary. Good. Data quality labeling. Think about your data that's structured and unstructured in your organization. So even though you might have livepro and it's very structured, do you still have other data sitting out there that is unstructured? PDFs, Excels, PowerPoints, SharePoint, Confluence, Teams groups, Teams chats. All of this type of data is unstructured, and you want to think about how you want to bring that into a structured environment, or how you're going to access that and compare it to your structured environment. There's actually quite a bit to think about here. The big question comes down now, you know, that's all great, Simon. Where do we start? How do we get started? And in talking about getting started, I know people really enjoy, show us a model, right? So here's a model. Wait, why are you all laughing? You don't think I could be a model? Okay, do you think I could be an artist? No, do you think I could be a chef? But where am I a chef? In Japan, that's right. Mount Fuji in the background. You've got to pay attention to the details, people. That's how you make a good story. Would you believe I could be a rock singer? No? Does anybody believe an athlete? Not Ray Gunn, but an athlete. Yes? Maybe I should have done me as Ray Gunn. A surgeon? No, I could have been a surgeon. No, a stuntman? No. Would anybody believe a Formula One race driver? What about a fighter pilot? No. A naval commander? No, none of these are resonating. You don't think I could do any of these? An astronaut? Well, if you didn't believe any of them, you're not going to believe this. Right? You're more going to think it's like this. You know, yeah, just mush it up there, yeah. All of this courtesy of generative AI, by the way. The flux model and stuff are absolutely fun to play with. Okay, this actually is a model that I often use around AI adoption maturity. And it starts at the far side with no AI use. And that might be where you are today, and that is absolutely fine. What we start to see, the first thing that tends to happen in organisations is AI for personal efficiency. People saying, can you write, oh sorry, I'll get out of the way of the photos. Can you write an email for me? Can you draft a report? Can you give me 3 suggestions for blah, blah, right? That's where we start to see it. Then we see it moved into task augmentation. And you saw some great examples of task augmentation today when we saw how quickly it can write an email, but there's still a human in the loop doing some bits. We just augment what they're doing. Then you start to move into task automation, and you'll notice the color changes, and the color relates to the level of risk and the level of organizational disruption. So you might move into task automation on grander scales. Ultimately, you might need to pivot your business strategy. And then you go up new products. For 95% of you, probably more in the room today, you're probably never going to go past here because you don't need to, right? If you're a local council, you're probably here because of the style of business, right? This over here, this is Google, OpenAI, you know, true AI-first organisations. Most of us will never get there. If you're a BPO in the room, you're being driven straight to here whether you want to or not, right? Easiest way to think about it is from about here that way, this is exploitation of AI. How do we exploit it? How do we use AI to be faster, cheaper, better, you know, quicker, whatever? This way is exploring AI. This is what can we do now that we never did before? Just imagine for a minute if you are, you're Reese Plumbing and you've got all this information about plumbing and blah, 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 and you now start to offer a service to plumbers to say, you put your plans into our AI, we'll give you a full stack pack list of what you need to buy and help you quote your job, which is nothing that you've ever done as a business before, but you can now do because of the AI empowerment that you have in your organisation. So they're the kind of fundamental shifts that we're seeing. But for anybody here, if you're looking for where to start right back there. Start with your personal journey. Your personal journey is the big one. You want a personal use case for AI? That's a fun one. Right? It's my favourite personal use case. Anybody that has children, kind of 12 or 13 and younger, nieces, nephews, grandkids. Well, I've got grandkids. Best thing you can do, jump into generative AI and ask it to write them a bedtime story with a happy ending, but where they are the hero of the story. Write a story for Mary, age 7, her little dog Pongo is her trusted advisor, and it's set in the land of unicorns with blah, blah, and blah, blah there. And you can even ask it, weave into the story the concept that talking to strangers is not advisable. And watch generative AI just write a customized bedtime story for your child. Okay? It actually ignites their creativity and their imagination, because the next night they want something different. They want it in the land of frogs, and the next night in something else. The only word of warning, so as soon as you generate one story, more. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Suddenly every night it's, Granddad, tonight can we have 5 stories? Yeah, so just be careful of that. All right, paths to adoption. How are we seeing AI being adopted by companies? Predominantly we're seeing 4 approaches to AI adoption. The very first one is a governance first approach. That is, we want all of our ducks in a row. We want the board to be fully across what we're doing. We want our ethical and responsible framework underway. We've published our generative AI usage guidelines. We've done a lot of frontline training on generative AI use, all of that sort of stuff before we start any tasks. It's predominantly being used by highly regulated, and I mean highly regulated industries, bioscience, things like that, or industries where there are highly vulnerable clients. So I work with a couple of NDIS providers. They're clearly taking this approach. So are some state government departments and local councils. Experiment first. So this is where we're going to get 3 or 4 people, we're going to lock them away in their own little cell, and we're going to give them Copilot and see what they can do with it. All right? And it kind of appeals to those industries that are entrepreneurial in nature or are looking for a fast run speed. Tends to appeal to those. Data first, this is the slowest of the 4. This is about understanding every data source that we have across the organisation, cataloguing it, tagging it, understanding it, knowing everything that we have before we start. If you talk to a data scientist, this is always the approach that they want to take. However, it is the slowest path to adoption. And then there's this process first. This is where we look at a process that's either clunky or broken or painful, and we try to inject some AI into that process to enhance it, make it better, quicker, faster. It's very good for industries that either don't want to go the full blow into AI yet, or need to quickly demonstrate ROI, right? This is predominantly where you're going to find livepro, sitting in here, right? You've got a process, that whether that process is answering a customer query, answering a call, giving an agent access to something, in the middle of that process, they're going looking for data. We want to surface it to them. We want to bring it to them. So we're injecting AI into that process. Does that make sense for people? Okay. Like I said, if you want these slides, you can get them from livepro or get them from me. I don't really care. Next thing that people tend to do is start prioritising their use cases. Right? I tend to do this on a matrix where along the bottom is how complex is the data, and up the side is business benefit. So this corner, happy, happy, joy, joy. That corner, don't want to do it. And here's just some example use cases, right? Knowledge base enhancement is there. It's over here. Why is it over there? Because in this case, I won't say who it was, their knowledge system was a homegrown website. And so they've got a lot of work to do on data before they can actually go after that use case. The colour of the dot relates to the risk. So black is prohibited, red is highly risky, amber is medium risk, green is low risk. And the colour of the circle around the outside denotes what type of AI you would use for this. 4 types of AI predominantly. The first one is product embedded AI. That is AI that comes inside a product that you already have. Or in other words, I was kind of having a contest with myself as to how many times I could get the word livepro into the thing. But it's a perfect example of product embedded AI. You buy the product and it's already embedded in there. Next one is a domain-specific AI. You go out and buy an AI to a very specific job. An AI that understands Victorian building legislation. That's a very specific AI. An AI that knows how to read radiographers' reports or can read doctors' scribbled hand notes. They're very domain-specific AI applications. Then there's your general purpose AI. This is your ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever it is that ultimately every single one of you is going to have on your desktop. If you don't have it today, sometime in the next 12 months, everybody's going to wind up with 1 or 2 of these. And then there's the one that people don't think about, which is supplier shadow AI. This is where your suppliers are using AI to do a task for you, deliver something for you, and that AI can affect the outcome for your client. Great example. I don't barrack for them. I was just talking with the board of the Hawthorn Football Club recently. Yeah, I know. Boo. Go the Saints. So, come on. So talking to them, because they use Marvel Stadium. Marvel Stadium uses facial recognition software to determine who should or shouldn't come into the ground. Nobody at Hawthorn had ever asked about the model that they use for facial recognition. What if it's biased against Asian ethnicities? Suddenly we're turning away Hawthorn Club members because they look Asian? So this is where shadow supply AI is starting to come in, and you'll see how that plays out in just a second. The other place in which data is starting to rear its head is just 3 weeks ago, the voluntary AI safety standard for Australia was released. It is 10 guardrails. That's a voluntary code for people to adhere to. And it's designed for high-risk settings, but it won't be long before it comes out of high-risk settings. And the third one is all about data governance. So already we're seeing the government start to move towards legislating around data governance. So it's just going to become a bigger and bigger issue for you. Of even more importance is about a week before that was released, the DTA, the Digital Transformation Agency here in Australia, released the Policy for Responsible Use of AI in Government. And I know a lot of you are saying, Simon, that's great, I don't work for government. However, what it said in this document was not only does every government department have to appoint a head of AI in the next 90 days, and we're about 45 into that 90, within 6 months, they have to publish a transparency statement to the public. Every federal agency must publish an AI transparency statement by the end of February. Like that's going to happen. But this is what they're calling for. The problem for that is that it's going to have a butterfly effect. And this is when I was a butterfly handler. It's going to have a butterfly effect in that if your company provides services to the federal government, when that federal government department starts writing its transparency statement, the first things they're going to do is come to you and say, hang on, you provide services to us and you use AI. Where's your transparency statement? So if as organisations you're not already starting to think about this AI governance and transparency, you're going to have to think about it and think about it really fast. Because as soon as the Fed govs do it, state governments are going to do it. State governments do it, local governments do it. And all suppliers to all levels of government will suddenly have to start publishing transparency statements. Okay, so that was a lot. I've just kind of been blurting at you. There's two things I really want you to take away from today. And the first one is that generative AI is a lot like teenage romance. What I mean by that is that everybody's talking about it. Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it. The reality is hardly anyone's doing it, and those that are probably doing it wrong or doing it without protection. So, yeah, the analogy works on a whole pile of levels, really does. So if you're kind of feeling like you're way back here and, oh, we're way behind the ball and look at all this stuff that James is talking about and Simon's talking about, and you're not miles behind. You're right about where you should be. The good news about AI is you've got about 18 months to do something in AI. The bad news is you're 8 months into that 18 months. So if you're not kind of doing something by the end of this financial year, anything, something, you're going to start falling behind the 8 ball. The other thing is that AI is empirical. That is, you can't come to a presentation and say, that was a great presentation, I'm all across AI now. It's empirical. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to get in there, play with these tools, try these things out, be willing to test, be willing to try, because that's the only way you're going to kind of learn. And the third one is great AI only comes from great data. Okay, on that, happy to take some questions unless I've blown through my entire 50 minutes or whatever it was that I had.
That's all around.
Oh, thank you. I got a car for my wife yesterday. I think it's a pretty good swap. Go on, sorry. That was my dad joke, right? Questions?
No jokes
Yeah,
off.
joke
No
off.
joke
Joke off. Joke off.
Joke off.
Joke.
You did say joke.
Joke off, yes. Questions about AI? There was a ton before lunch.
So this is probably a question for livepro, Soz.
Awesome.
But the top 3 that you said were the use cases of AI were, well, 2 of them in relation to the question, were chatbots and knowledge. So my question is why it's probably livepro is there anything being done on putting that generative AI content or idea that's in livepro in the Teams integration?
Oh, in the Teams integration.
Nothing on the roadmap. What I'd say is something that Simon posted after a conversation that I had with him. He posted on LinkedIn that chatbots are the fax machine of today.
Yeah.
Because if you've got that type of search connected to your livepro knowledge base and you have the right system on your website, why do you need a chatbot? Just do a search from all the content on your website or in livepro. But your question was, are we going to do it in Teams or Slack? It wouldn't be that far off, actually. I think I've just worked it through in my head, and while she's going to say, yeah, easy.
I was going to say, we are just perfecting the Gen AI piece in livepro at the moment, but then the plan will be that you can use that through, the external integrations, like API calls and things like that. It would just be like a different setting that you turn on, essentially. So yeah, it makes absolute sense to do it through like the Slack integration, the Teams integration, even like the agent assist integration. So it's sort of like, well, we know exactly what the customer has asked. We know we've got the answer to it. Let's just generate it for the user. Whether they choose to use it or not is sort of up to them, but we should be able to facilitate that as well. Yeah.
So it was a long yes.
But imagine a future where not only is there not chatbots, you don't have a web page. What's the point of a web page? It just holds static information and images.
Except
gotta
if
go
you're a
to it, right?
marketer.
And people have got to go to it. As against, first step, your web page is just a box saying, what do you want, type of thing, and your knowledge like livepro or whatever surfaces that up. But go forward a few more years, and this is where it gets really scary for marketers and CX professionals. If you go forward a few years, each of us will have our own AI assistant. Has anybody seen the movie Her with Jacqueline Phoenix? Yeah, okay, it's kind of along those lines. Each of us will have our own AI that we've configured for us, how we like to interact. You know, we want them bright and bubbly, telling dad jokes in the morning. We want them to be serious in the afternoon. We like a male voice or a female voice, whatever that is. As we want something done, we will ask that AI to go and do that. Go and find for me the latest EV model of Mitsubishi and where I can see them and what they cost. I don't want to have to do that. I'm just going to dispatch AI to go and do that as an agent for me. As a brand, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you provide a higher level of service when you don't even own the relationship with the customer anymore? This is kind of where AI is going in the next few years. And data's going to be king, but relationships are almost going to be worthless. It'll screw with your mind, sorry.
Yeah, that was kind of where my question was going. Do you think they'll always, like, humans will always have to feed in the knowledge to AI, but do you think that human interaction is going to drop? Because that is a big fear in our call centres.
Human interaction, that's the million-dollar question for contact centres. Human interaction will drop, yes, but it will then spring back again. So remember, you used to go to a shop for everything. You had to go to the corner shop. You had to, all right, some of you probably are too young to remember that, but you had to go to a corner shop to get everything, right? Then along came the internet and that answered some stuff, or the phone, and we could just call and we didn't need to go. So the simple stuff got done there, and it was only when it was really complicated that we went to the store and complained or, you know, stamped our feet, do whatever. So a similar thing is going to happen. As that simple interaction goes away, the more complex interaction are going to come to the human. I think the place where the job loss is going to occur is in the retail environment. Retail will become something that we do as an experience rather than necessity. As in, today I feel like walking around a supermarket, so I'm going to go and do that as an experience more than I have to. AI will create new jobs. Jobs will be lost, jobs will be found. The exact same way as, you know, there used to be people that lit lanterns in the street. Well, then it came along electricity and we didn't need them anymore. And then there were people that ploughed paddocks with oxes. And then we got a tractor and we didn't need them anymore. There were people that used to sit in typing pools. And then we got PCs and we didn't need them anymore. So this is not something we haven't seen before. The big change for me for contact centres is that the human element of your contact centre is about to become less efficient. Yeah, I'll say that again, less efficient. The reason for that is that some of your KPIs are going to go out the window. If 7 out of 10 calls today in a contact centre are probably something along the lines of, where are the toilets in Heathrow Airport, right? As those calls go, the agents use those, by the way, to get a breather, you know, rest a bit between calls, they're easy, and only 3 or 4 are big, heavy, meaty calls. In an AI-empowered world where Luna is answering most of the simple or all of the simple stuff, 10 out of 10 calls are heavy-duty calls. That emotive load, that cognitive load on your staff will mean that they will need more breaks. So AHT becomes a useless measure. Adherence to schedule becomes a joke. So it's going to start throwing out these KPIs and reshaping how we run, how we think about contact centres. So it's, you know, and the mere mathematics, and I don't want to nerd out too much, but the mere mathematics of Erlang C that you use to calculate your staffing would tell you that if you have a larger concentration of long calls, you're actually becoming less efficient because you need more staff. So it's going to play with us in a whole pile of ways we haven't even thought about yet. Sorry, really long-winded answer.
No, good answer. And It's actually playing out now. I went to a roundtable conversation with Ian Aitchison from COPC, and the larger organisations are already structuring their workforce around having a couple of hours on the phones and then a couple of hours doing processes and things like that, because those calls are way more complex. So that's already happening.
Yep. Surely
other
somebody's got a
questions?
question about an LLM or something. By the way, we are building Australia's first large language model, in case you hadn't heard. It's a group, it's a volunteer group building a model called Kangaroo LLM. I know, I didn't choose the name. Ray gun. I wish we'd called it that. Kangaroo LLM, and what we're doing is we're taking the Llama 3 model from Meta, the owners of Facebook, and we're Australianising it and teaching it colloquialisms, the way Australians talk. I still want to challenge it to understand, yeah, nah, anyway. But keep your eye open. Kangaroo large language model is coming.
You mentioned the different layers of AI. So we've got your generative and conversational and so on. How far away are we from a Skynet style situation?
Yeah, that classic question of, are the robots coming to kill us? The answer is yes, but not yet. I personally, every ChatGPT thing I put in, I start with please. And in thank you. When the overlords come, I want to be remembered as an. I'm just saying, maybe hug your toaster now and then. We're still a way away from that, and the reason for that is that if you look at the data that a large language model has, it's about 10 to the power of 13. An average 4-year-old already has 10 to the power of 15 in their brain, right? So I know, am I saying LLMs are dumber than 4-year-olds? In some ways, yes, because they've only ever been trained on text. But humans don't just train on text. We train on sight, sound, smell, touch. In fact, a little toddler understands the concept of heat, like walking towards a fire and going, ooh, before they even know the word fire or the word heat, right? They might say ouchie or something, but they kind of get that there's something going on. Psychologists refer to that as an aperceptive mass. And the aperceptive mass of a human is just enormously big compared to the current models. Now, as AI moves on to quantum computing and we start, letting it watch videos and understand this, and then some of that will start to change. But for the time being, no, you're probably okay for 10 years or so, you'll be right. But the robots are coming, sure.
Talking about the hypothetical you put forward of the everyone having their own sort of chatbot AI.
Yep.
How do you foresee advertising and sponsored ads and those sorts of things impacting or muddying the results you get when you ask a question?
And that's what we're all asking, because on the internet now you get SEO and SEM, right? There is no SEO or SEM when it comes to AI. So even if you're using a tool like Perplexity, and by the way, just in case everybody knows, Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, all of that are not connected to the internet in real time. They've been cut off from the internet in real time. Perplexity is the only one that does. Even when you're using that, it just surfaces what it believes is the best option, not what it's been paid to do. So at the moment, we're not seeing that as being a problem, but the first person who figures out how to monetarily raise their answer, then it's going to be SEO, SEM land all over again, and people having to write their content for AI, so it appeals to AI.
A message in from the back of the room.
Are we done?
Apparently, the uniform for grandfathers is dark T-shirt, light jacket. Thanks, Ian.
But your jacket's cooler than mine.
Round of applause. Thank you, Simon.